Beethoven said that it's better to hit the wrong note confidently than hit the right note unconfidently. Never be afraid to be wrong or to embarrass yourself. We're all students in this life, and there's always something more to learn. Fortunately, on this episode, I demonstrate that I still have a lot to learn when it comes to interviewing and being a good host. There are a few times where I interrupt the guest and end up talking for a longer period of time. It's all very good information. I hope you all enjoy it. But in the future, I'll do my best to not do that as much. That way you can hear less of me and more from the person that I'm interviewing and having on there, so you can get the information directly from the guest as opposed to just myself. But anyways, I hope you all enjoy, and thanks for your support.
Hi, everyone. This is Paul Cooper, the host of the Take Note podcast. We're here with Joe Kennedy of Flying Moose Investments. It is currently January 14th, and we're going to do an interview here about Joe, his history in investing, his life, and then what he's currently involved in with his investments, and why he eventually graduated to note investing as opposed to some of the other more traditional investments out there. So, Joe, if you'd like to go ahead and begin, give people a little bit of idea of who you are and kind of a little brief synopsis of your life here, and we'll get started.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. It's good being with you today. Yeah, my company is called Flying Moose, and we're note investors. And as many people, they tend to ask me, who is Flying Moose and where in the world did you come up with that name?
There you go. I'm glad you're bringing that up because that was going to be my first question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when I set the company up, I wanted a unique name. I wanted something that would stand out. You know, I didn't want to be ABC Capital or XYZ Investments, that kind of thing. I wanted something that would be notable and you could remember it, once you've heard it and you go, oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Of course.
So, that's kind of why I wanted a unique name. And the origin, well, it's kind of simple, really. Around this house, my wife, when I get in her way in the kitchen, she calls me a moose. And so I've kind of gotten that connotation from her. And then one of my hobbies is flying. I like to fly as a private pilot. And so it kind of seemed natural that I'd be the Flying Moose. So
nice. And what's the most exotic plane you've flown?
I mean, from a pilot's perspective, I haven't flown all that exotic stuff. Mainly Cessnas 172s and some Cherokees. So I just, I'm the guy that basically busts holes in clouds, and I know on your side time you do a little air traffic control, so we like to
hours a
harass
week.
the air traffic controllers.
So how far along are you in your pilot experience? Do you have your instrument or commercial rating or anything?
I just have my private pilot license. I'm working on getting my instrument.
Okay.
So that's kind of the next step. It's getting
just doing the weekend warrior thing.
Time to go.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it adds up pretty quick.
It does, but I enjoy it, and I did take a course to learn about what they call upset recovery.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in these little planes, for people that don't know, if you're in these little planes and you happen to get behind a big jet or something like that, well, the backwash from that plane, from that jet engine, can actually just kind of flip you in a little bitty plane. So A, you try to avoid that, and B, it was, how do you recover from that? And that was quite an interesting exercise.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing instrument training, we didn't do it for that, but it was just, they call it unusual attitudes, where your plane's just in some stage of flight that you should normally never be in. And it's how do you recover and get your plane safe and level. And,
right.
And so you're not doing anything crazy. You're not aimed up straight in the air or at the ground.
Yeah. So,
so
far it's all been great. Takeoffs of equal landings. So, I have nothing to complain about.
Well, that's the old dumb joke is takeoff is optional, but landing's always mandatory.
Yeah.
And then the joke on our end as an air traffic controller is, hey, if a pilot makes a mistake, a pilot dies. If I make a mistake, a pilot dies.
True.
Either way, at the end of the day, I should get to go home unless they crash into the tower. So, it's a bit morbid, but it's also there as a reminder that what you do is potentially dangerous. We have the safest system in the NAS. We've got good people. but when something goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong. You generally don't have fender benders when it comes to airplane crashes.
No.
It's usually pretty bad.
That's very true. Very true.
Well, I guess we should move on with investments. And you got any
All right.
notable crashes with your investments? Because that's always something that that people can learn from.
Right. Well, I was going to tell you a little bit about my background.
Okay, cool.
Kind of in the beginning, I spent over 20 years in a corporate finance career. So I've spent the time in that corporate world doing the, you wish it was 9 to 5, but it never really works out that way. But I did that. And as a personal investor, I initially invested always in, stocks and bonds.
Yeah, the traditional thing.
Yeah, all the traditional stuff, stocks and bonds and mutual funds and all those kinds of things, and spent a lot of time, studying and researching which ones you wanted and those kinds of things. And for me, what I found, if you happen to be fortunate and hit the cycle right, you could come out okay.
Yep.
But if you didn't hit it right, you didn't come out okay. And so it was, for me, it got to be kind of a guessing game on, well, when do I invest in this versus that? And I made a little money on some stocks and lost a little money on other stocks, and it was never.
It didn't seem consistent like it should be.
No, not at all.
And I've talked about that before. I opened my Roth IRA when I was 16. When I was 26 getting out of college, I looked and I'd broken even for the decade. Yeah. So that's the thing. Can you afford to lose 10 years? So I think that's why me personally, and probably yourself, try to graduate to something that you have a little bit more control over. Because if I'm going to lose money, I'd rather it be my fault than just something I can't control.
Exactly. And so I moved out of that, and I moved into real estate. I did some rentals. I got some, and I still have a couple rentals to this day.
Were they single family?
Single family, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't do any multifamily. I just did some single family, and they're okay. But from a cash flow perspective, you don't make them. I haven't made much on mine. All it is basically whatever the appreciation is over the years that you own.
And that seems to be pretty common if you're not buying, really low income housing.
Right.
Lower income, you'll get more cash flow. The nicer areas that should supposedly have less headaches seem to be more of an appreciation / amortization play for the longer term and not so much cash flow.
Yeah. Right. So I did that. And then I thought, maybe my entrepreneur spirit kicked in a little bit, and I said, maybe I ought to, I think I'll buy a franchise. And so,
what'd you buy?
Oh,
that bad?
Oh no, it was worse. It was worse than that.
Oh no. You got to tell us.
I'll just say it was a boutique fitness franchise, and I thought it was going to be great, and I drank the magic water and all that kind of stuff, and opened up a couple of locations, and it was probably the biggest financial disaster I ever embarked on.
So did they set you up where you were like leasing the equipment and everything?
Well, pretty much, it's a fitness place. So you've got the build out of the location, and you've got some, kind of minimal stuff. It wasn't hardcore fitness like you see some with all of the
CrossFit training and powerlifting
training and all that kind of stuff. It was, it was more of a kickboxing type stuff. So, there wasn't a whole lot, but the business model just didn't work for me, or I didn't work it right. I don't know which, but the end of that story was, a lot of money down the drain, and I just had to, close it to stop the bleeding.
Yeah. At some point you got to cut the losses, and that hurts, and it can be hard because a lot of times, especially if you're running a business or doing some investments, like there's a learning curve, and it takes a while. So you don't want to give up too early.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to just waste time and money. Yeah, no, that's rough.
Yeah. So after that, I kind of went back to real estate, and that's when I started kind of researching different things, and started looking into notes, and I attended some different stuff. I took the course Brett Palumbo has, online with his Distress Pro site. It's an online course basically. You read and study yourself type thing, and really got interested in notes and possibilities.
So you did that before you did a lot of other note training?
Yes, that was my very first
okay
introduction, if you will.
That's funny. I've never heard of anyone starting with that. So
Yeah.
if those of you that don't know, Brett Palumbo, he does this thing called Distress Pro. He teaches a little bit about note investing, the basic concepts. It's definitely not a full picture. But then he also has this monthly subscription that allows you to get different information on different banks and hedge funds and credit unions. So you could potentially find different people who might be, different institutions that might be selling notes. So that's what Brett Palumbo's deal is, and that's what Distress Pro is.
Right.
And so the special thing here is that Joe started with that, whereas usually most people I know get that after they decide they want to do note investing, after they've done some other type of education program or something else. So you did it a little backwards.
Yeah. Well, I just came up, I just found it on the internet and came across it and thought, okay, well, let's learn some stuff about it. So that was good. And then I decided, well, I wanted to learn some more. So, I got involved with, some of the gurus,
Yep.
that exist, and
seems like all of us have.
Yeah, attended their training, and really felt like I got more of a handle of what was going on, and actually started to go into notes myself. One of the things, though, that's kind of interesting that some of them teach that I didn't particularly follow, and it's just because my personal preference, and is that some of them teach well, if you really want to be successful, you really need to get investors in, and you need to get them involved early, because that's where you're going to make money, by having investors.
Yep. And, using other people's money, because you'll eventually run out of your own.
Yeah.
Yep.
But my philosophy was a little different, in that I guess being a little older and knowing all the saving that you do for through your lifetime and all this kind of stuff, that I guess I wanted to be comfortable that I was competent at doing the note investing before I put anybody else's money at risk. And so I took a little different path, in that I started off doing joint ventures with some people that had experience, so that I could kind of see and how the things progressed, and how that correlated with my understanding. I did something. You and I did a joint venture.
Yeah. No, Joe and I have got one that we're finishing up in Pittsburgh. It's been a doozy. We'll talk about that once it's completed, which hopefully should be soon. I love note investing, but it's not all sunshines and roses. You can definitely lose money, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it that even if you've done deals, you won't know everything for a while, because you just won't encounter that problem. It could be a different jurisdiction. It could just be a weird issue that doesn't happen that often. Yeah. And so I would definitely tell people, if you're looking to get in, there are some good gurus out there, but find another investor and joint venture with them. Because I've had people ask me to teach them, and I'm just like, I'm not going to sell a course. That's not what I want to do. Right. Let's find a deal and work through it together. I think that's more beneficial for everyone.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of people that'll do that. And that's kind of how I got started. I wasn't necessarily, I was joint venturing without actually creating a joint venturing deal. Years ago, and I found some experienced people, and they just kind of let me tag along with small positions in on some different deals. And I think that's a better way of getting your feet wet and not having to necessarily cough up a bunch of money. And if you are coughing up money, hopefully it's for an actual investment that you'll make money on, as opposed to just paying it towards education.
Right. So my next step after doing the joint venturing was, okay, I wanted to go ahead and buy some notes on my own.
Yep.
And so that's what I did. I went out and I used a self-directed IRA to buy notes. And so I bought notes, and I've kind of taken my personal philosophy. I've taken the position is that, I don't want to joint venture with anybody on a note that I'm not comfortable with owning myself.
Yeah.
It's not just something you grab out of the air and give me your money and we'll put it to it. So that's what I've done. So I've invested in these, with my self-directed IRA, and then, I'm now leveraging that into, okay, working with joint venture partners on those things that I'm comfortable with, that I know that's going to, should give them, not always a ballpark, knock it out of the ballpark return, but their investment's going to be secure, and they're going to get at least, a decent return.
And that's huge. And that's what I'm starting to see is like, there is no such thing as a guarantee or secure investment, but these you can have a lot more action and a lot more influence on, and they're secured, not to be confused with secure, meaning that they're secured by the real estate. Exactly. Whereas, you buy stocks, technically, you own part of the company, but you can't foreclose on them if the company is not taking care of things. And so it's, some people would view that as safer or less risky, especially if you know what you're doing. Right.
So that's kind of how I've evolved, and I've now got to the position where I don't think I'll ever know everything, but I feel confident that I know enough to look at different things and what to be aware of as I'm investing in these different notes, and that I can bring that to the table for
exactly investors. Yeah, it's not your first rodeo. You've had a few black eyes, bumps and bruises,
right.
And but that's the thing. Like you said, you're never going to know everything, especially if you invest in a wide geographic area, because each state and county's changing things. We've seen some crazy shenanigans in Ohio and Pennsylvania, so it's a changing landscape, and that's probably the hardest part, at least in my opinion, is keeping up with all the different jurisdictions across the U.S. But that being said, it's probably the easiest way to invest across the U.S. besides maybe getting into some type of gigantic commercial syndication.
Right. So that's kind of how I've evolved into notes, and I agree with you. I think what I like about the notes is you can exercise control over it, because when you get to a note, I mean, you can look at all kinds of different options depending on what's happening with the note.
I think it's what strategies. Usually 9 to 10 different exit strategies. They don't fit all notes, but you can usually get at least 5 per note if you have to.
Right. And so you can work on it, and at the end of the day, that the real estate is, what you've got. If you end up having to foreclose, I mean, that's what it's secured by. So, that's what I like about it, and that coupled with, I don't have to worry about, a renter calling me saying, hey, wait a minute, the AC just quit working, or, the hot water heater's leaking, or the toilet won't flush, because that's not something to do.
That's their problem. You got to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you're not always going to have it, but usually there's less calls for that type of stuff. It's like, you own it. You're the one that's responsible for it. You're the adult here.
Yeah.
That being said, you buy non-performing notes, you'll find there are a lot of adults that don't behave like it because they're not taking care of the roof over their head by paying their mortgage.
Yeah, that can be a little frustrating, but I don't know what you do.
Well, you got to realize Christmas and going to Disney World is more important than that. So that's our fault for thinking incorrectly.
Yeah, it is interesting. Another one of my premises is, I always like to start out with, particularly when you have non-performing notes, to try to work with people to keep them in their house.
Absolutely.
I don't, I'm not one of these guys that, oh, wait a minute, you're out in the street tomorrow type thing. No, And so I try to work with people and put things in place and make some modifications if necessary, whatever, to keep them in their house, and, have them try to have a normal life that we would all like to have,
Yeah.
And so, but there are the people, like you said, that, they don't make their payments, and the next thing you know, they're posting on Facebook about a new camper that they bought.
They flip you the bird, and so it's just like, all right, game on then.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I don't know what else to do, other than, at some point.
I mean, and that is our recourse when you buy notes, is to take the property back either through forfeiture or foreclosure, depending on the state, and if it's a mortgage or a land contract. And so that's the final recourse. There are a lot of different options, and it's just like, people might view it as like, oh, you're kicking people out on the streets. Yeah, but they weren't paying. They weren't fulfilling their obligation. We can't just kick people out on the streets because we get a better deal doing something else. It's just like a landlord can't kick people out on the streets because they figured out they've got below market rent. They have to wait till the lease is up, and then and then go from there. So it's I haven't had to kick out any little old ladies yet. I'm waiting for my first one, but I mean, come on, that's not what it is. There are people that do that, but there's too much money to be made doing the right thing, and it's a lot less hassle too if you can get people to start paying again.
Right, exactly. It's nice, and sometimes I had one that was interesting. One note I bought, it was up in Michigan, and it turned out that there was two people that were on the note. It was a mother and a son, and unfortunately the son had passed away, and he was the one that was living in the house.
Oh.
And the mother, she was in a senior living facility.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we kind of found out what the deal was, reached out to them, and she said, well, thank goodness. She says, I don't want the house. I don't need the house. Please take it off my hands so I don't have to worry about it, and all those kinds of things. So, while it was kind of a sad situation that she lost her son, it was actually helpful for her because we did a cash for keys, basically. I said, well,
give her a little money. She doesn't have to deal
how about
with
if I give you this money to just, clean it out and you sign it off? And she said, oh, absolutely, and it made her day and made everything easy for us. So, that was kind of
that's the big thing with, it doesn't matter if it's real estate or business in general, is finding a profitable solution for the people you're trying to help. It doesn't, it could be selling cars. It could be people that are going through foreclosure or trying to sell their homes. They may not be looking for the most amount of money they could get for their home. They want problem solved. And it's important you take the time to figure out what their problem is.
Right. So anyway, that's kind of what I like to do. Feel good in those situations. I, knock on wood, haven't had to, foreclose and evict anybody yet, but I have some that are kind of right on the cusp there that we're probably going to have to take some action if things don't.
To me, that's the most frustrating part. It's just like, wake up, we're trying to help you. Yeah. I mean, it's just, there are so many desperate people that are with one of these big banks that would love this help, but we can't buy from them. And then you get these other people where, you're bending over backwards for them and they just like, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's, it can be frustrating for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, as I kind of moved into notes, I guess there were three areas that I came up with that I kind of find challenging.
Okay. Before you get into this, how many notes are you at?
I'm at 24 notes right now.
Nice. Good.
Yeah.
Good. So you've got a few under your belt.
Yeah. And I'm looking at, if some people are interested in partials, selling partials on those notes.
For those of you that aren't familiar, partial means you're buying payments, you're buying part of the note. So generally it means that, if there was 30 years worth of payments left, you could buy, 100 payments or whatever, and it would be set at a certain term. So you're getting a certain return and you're collecting those payments. And then once you've collected all of your payments, then the original, the original owner, the person who sold you those payments, would collect the payments from then on. That's a very bird's eye view of what partials are.
Right. And so, and it's good for people who don't really want to get too involved in notes, but want to get a decent return. It's mailbox money.
I call it mailbox money, man, because that's what it should be. And every now and then performing notes will go non-performing. And so that's you need to know how to deal with that. But generally when you're buying partials, it should be mailbox money that you can rely on pretty consistently.
Exactly. So anyway, three of the biggest challenges I've found is finding good assets to purchase. There's a lot of places you can find stuff. I mean, that are out there that are easy to find.
Yeah.
Different sites and exchanges that sell them. The big challenge, it's two things. One, to find them at the right price.
Yep.
I tend to find that on a lot of the exchanges and stuff, they tend to be pricey.
Those, if you were a solo investor that doesn't have much time and just wanted to buy performing stuff and you understood how to do that, you could go to the exchanges and fill up your portfolio, with an okay return. But especially when we're trying to do it for business and or bring in partners, it's they're way too expensive.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is you find some in different places, and I mean, to say that they are a dump would be to give them credit.
Yeah.
It's just like
They're garbage, folks. There's a lot of recycled garbage out there that people are selling as prime real estate, and it's a 4-letter word. It's not any good. You need to be very careful. It's the same recycled garbage that just goes around everywhere. So be very careful. And that's where you get someone that's experienced like Joe or myself to just look over your shoulder real quick. And it's the usual suspects, folk. Like there's several hedge funds out there that are just selling junk. So be very careful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting, the stuff that you come across. And I don't know if I told you about, I had one particular asset in Memphis, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a realtor there that I was working with, and we had pretty much agreed on a price. It all looked good, and so I sent the realtor to do a drive-by and a comp on it. And so we were getting close to want to close on this, and all of a sudden my phone rings, and it's the realtor. Says, "Joe, whatever you do, don't close on that deal. Don't close on the deal."
Oh no.
And so, and she left me a message because I didn't catch it. So I got the message. So I called her right back. She says, "Joe." I said, what's the deal? She goes, "There's no house there.
Yep.
It's just a piece of land." But if you look back at the Google,
Zillow, Trulia,
go to Trulia, you go to, different places, Zillow, and you see all this house that's there and it doesn't look too bad, but the reality of it is it was an empty lot.
Yeah, and just because like you look at Google and the picture's only like a year or two old, you still need to go by because it may be a crater in the ground. And like Joe said, it may not exist. It could be concrete with grass growing up everywhere. So it's not an uncommon thing for sure. That's why you always have someone go by.
Right. So, I spend a lot of time looking at stuff, and you kick a lot of them to the curb because it's just again, it's garbage. And so you need to really try to find the flower in the weeds, if you will. But it takes a lot of looking. Unless
and unfortunately, the looking takes time and it takes money. So I mean, it's one of those things. It's like this last year, I spent a lot of time looking at St. Louis assets. All of them we ended up not closing on because they had huge sewer liens through the city. Mm-hmm. They were hard to find. Luckily, the O&E got it because I paid extra for the background check on it. But those would have been $10,000 plus mistakes. And you got to be very careful. You'll slowly learn what cities have issues like that. And a lot of cities are now, and counties are starting to slap taxes on them, even if it's from other properties. Pennsylvania's doing that. So like some of these hedge funds, the property you're looking at may be up to date, but the other properties they have aren't. So they'll take all those delinquent taxes and attach it to every single one. So be very careful. You'll waste a lot of money on due diligence on stuff that's not good and you can't close on. So be very careful that you don't close on stuff. And especially if you've had a drought where you haven't closed on any deals, don't go into a bad deal just because it's the first one that's not terrible.
No. And just because you're tired of paying money to find out it's not a good deal, but still, whether you like it or not, it's money well spent.
Yeah, I mean, I spent almost $10,000 the first quarter last year on assets we didn't close on due diligence, but that's better than spending like $100,000 on assets that would have been useless.
Exactly. That's kind of my, one of the first big challenges because, I'm not a big fund or that kind of stuff. Of course, the downside I think with buying a whole set of assets from a fund is, you're going to get some good stuff and you're going to get some not so good stuff too. Usually it's not all roses. So,
and that's a way that I've kind of been able to get out there is by buying smaller pools. And it's like, look, I bid on 5 of them. 2 of them are garbage. 1 of them's just okay. And the other 2 should be decent. I'll take all 5 of them. It's just, you're going to have to reduce the price on the garbage ones. And so that way you're helping the seller out by at least giving them something for the garbage, because if they can clean off their books a little bit, you're going to be a much better client to theirs, and they're more likely to sell to you than if you only want to cherry pick the absolute best ones. Right.
So, once you find the good assets, then you need to, and you learn it more and more over time is, how much should you really pay for the asset?
Mm-hmm.
And like most note investors, you know, I've got a model that I use that I plug in all the numbers, and it runs it, gives you, what your financial outcome would be based on different scenarios, whether you want to hold a property or whether you want to flip the note and resell it. If it's like a non-performing, get it performing and sell it, what kind of outcome you get like that? Or, what worst case, if you had to foreclose, what's it going to look like? And so, you do all that. It seems like, I don't know, maybe I don't know if I'm wanting too big of a return or what, but or people are just paying ridiculous amounts for some of these things. It seems to me. I don't know that my return is unrealistic, but I bid on a lot of these different things, and people are paying even more, and so.
Yeah, so to give everyone some examples here, there are a lot of hedge funds that are floating lists around to everyone, which is nice because it's easy to find, but they're charging anywhere from 70 to 80% of the UPB, which is the unpaid balance, which means that's the balance that's owed. And so they're charging 70 to 80% of that. The problem is that's not nearly enough margin because, if you were to go in and not spend any money, and you're able to get 100% of the value, then you made 20%. So you think that's good. But there are a lot of expenses and holding costs, and that's a lot of risk to take on. But you get all these other people that are fix and flippers, and they used to buy REOs. And if you're buying an REO for 80% on the dollar, then that was pretty good. And so all these newbies have been coming in and bidding things up. And a lot of them have left the market in this last year because they've lost money. So you may think a 20% discount is good for non-performing, but it's not. It generally needs to be at least 50%. If that was a performing note, then that'd be a great discount most times. So that's one of the things that I've seen, a lot of newbies coming in, bidding up stuff. And then a month or two later, I see the exact same tape floated again because they finally realized they couldn't buy it at that price.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's the other thing. You get new tapes and you look at it, and you find the same assets that you've already looked at in this new tape.
The same garbage from last month. Yep.
Yeah, that's frustrating. You're just wasting time on that stuff.
Well, and part of that is some of these larger hedge funds that we're alluding to that sell this stuff, they basically have to sell. Right. And they're trying to get as much as they can, and they really are kind of unscrupulous and don't really care if they're selling you a bad collateral file or whatever. It's kind of sad and bad. And you realize it's like, I don't think you guys are making money, but because they're also losing stuff to tax sales all the time. So you got to be very careful. And especially some of these older CFDs from hedge funds. If you're buying mortgages directly from banks and credit unions, there's probably going to be a lot less BS associated with it, but those are much harder to find. And if you can find them, take care of that asset manager.
Yeah. I mean, I had one in Louisiana that I was looking at, and it looked really good. And I was about to make an offer on it, and I asked for the servicer notes. Mm-hmm. And the servicer is the one that collects the money, from the borrower.
Think of the servicer like the property management for a rental.
Right. And as things go along, these servicers, they keep notes of conversations that they have with the borrower and with the lender. And, so there's kind of a track record of history of what's happened with this particular asset. Mm-hmm. So I asked them, can you give me the servicer's comments? And they sent it to me, and I started looking down, and I see that, well, in a year ago, in January of 19, the servicer had received a letter from the county condemning the property and requiring the house to be torn down.
Yep.
And so the servicer sent that on to the lender, which was the hedge fund, basically, sent it to the hedge fund and said, they basically saying you're going to have to, remove it from the property, take it down. And, is that what you want to do? And they came back, and it's in the service note. Yeah, we agree. We will, go ahead and just demolish the house. And it's still on their list of things they're selling.
Yeah.
I'm going.
And it's messed up because technically that would be fraud and you would win in court, but how much time and money is it going to take you to get that back? And so that's why we said when they're unscrupulous, we don't know if they're necessarily doing that intentionally or just because they're big and bureaucratic, but you got to be very careful. And Joe, I had almost the exact same situation happen with me back in December when I bought a bunch of performing notes. This one property was performing. The borrower was subletting it out to as a rental, and it got condemned, and it was all in the servicing notes. And I asked the sellers, like, okay, you guys need to figure out what's going on with this condemned status, because they're trying to do repairs. And last I heard, it was still condemned, and they didn't have the money to do repairs. So it's like, well, I can't buy this,
Yeah.
and you got to be careful. Another one of those, the water pipes broke. And the lady tried to get her insurance to pay for them, but it was too small of a deduction. So I was like, okay, well, if we can get more information about that, that's probably okay, because if it's too small for the insurance to pay for, it probably wasn't that big of a deal. But there's a wealth of information in those servicing notes, like you said there.
Yeah. So that's kind of one of the learnings as you become an investor, of things to look at, because it's not an obvious thing for a lot of people to think about looking at servicing notes. So that
you won't always get them too. They won't always volunteer, and that's why you want to ask for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's a lot of things. Due diligence is it's king as far as making
and
sure you've got.
And it can be very expansive. Like you think, oh, you look up the O&E, you make sure the property's still there, you see how much it's worth. Those are the high points. Like servicing notes, that's a smaller detail thing that can be really helpful. Looking at the pay histories,
Right.
There can be a lot to it.
Yeah. So, doing that part of due diligence and trying to bid a competitive price is one of the challenges. And the last one, and I think you had a good discussion with Dickie Baldwin earlier about the services he provides with regarding to the service providers that he has in his network, throughout the United States, as far as, all kinds of things that you need. And, I know Dickie well. He just lives down the road from me here.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, he's a good guy, but he's kind of my go-to guy when I don't know somebody in a particular area. He hooks you up, and he does a good job.
Dickie and I talk about it, and I'm not joking when I say Dickie probably saved my business, because the worst, most frustrating part for me was getting someone to drive by the property and give me a no BS estimate of the repairs and the condition and what it's worth. Because realtors generally don't want to do it for free, and they want the listing, but a lot of these properties aren't worth that much if they were to list them.
Oh yeah.
And so even though I was offering them like $50 to do it, they would flake. You couldn't get them on the phone. Dickie takes care of all of that. So yeah, like you're saying here, I truly use Dickie for a lot of stuff, and he's great. And that's the other part about being an investor is networking with other investors, see who's good, who knows who for what you need, and trying to, build networks in certain cities if you like certain cities, just because that can be the hardest part. The management of some of this basic due diligence stuff can kill you, especially since when you get the bid, most of the time you have 5 to 7 business days if nothing's wrong to close. And telling them that it took you 4 days to finally get someone on the phone to drive by the property isn't a valid excuse.
Right.
So,
that's definitely an issue. So it's good to have him as a resource.
Yep. Referrals are awesome. You'll need them for everywhere, and because you don't want to just be guessing when you're about to drop hundreds of dollars every month or thousands of dollars in services.
Right. And the other thing you mentioned just now, I'd like to highlight is extremely important, or it's been really beneficial to me, is once you kind of get into the note network, and you get to know other note investors, and they get to know you. I've found, by and large, at least all the people I've dealt with have been really good people to deal with. They're very helpful and forthright. If you need some help in a certain area with a servicer, or if you have a question of something that's kind of really weird, they may have come across it already, and they can help you out. And it's really a good network. I've enjoyed being part of knowing all the rest of the note investors and talking to them, and we meet up at different events and those kinds of things. And so that's you can't put a value on that, but it's really valuable to have all those contacts and be a part of that network.
For sure. And what I would say is compared to most investing, especially real estate investing, note investors generally aren't sharks. We're not eating our young. They're much more helpful. There are generally plenty of deals out there. You're going to have a lot less people trying to screw you over and take a deal out from underneath you. And if they do, it's a small community, and those people generally don't last long. So, you'll hear it referred to as co-opetition and things like that. So, we're trying to compete a little bit. Everyone wants to do better than the next guy. But you can get people online information that you've never met before, give them a call, tell them who you are, and they can probably have at least 30 minutes for you and give you a referral.
Oh yeah.
So it's a great, other note investors are a great resource. Don't hesitate to reach out to them.
Absolutely. It's, nice to kind of have that resource available to you for sure.
I mean, we've talked before where we've bounced stuff off. Like I've gone to conventions or something that you didn't, and vice versa, and we'll share notes and talk about topics, see what's new and upcoming. Because like I said, there's plenty of room for all of us to succeed. If one of us was trying to be a billionaire or hedge fund, then yeah, maybe they wouldn't take the other person's phone call, but that's not who we are. And there's plenty for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things I enjoy about note investing, is to have that resource.
Oh yeah, the camaraderie. If I can speak, the camaraderie is great. There's a lot of people that you can be friends with, bounce ideas off. If you're struggling with someone, I'm sure you can find someone to either be a shoulder to cry on, or they can help you with that problem because they've probably gone through it. People are very giving with their time generally in the note community.
Yeah. And, if there are some rascals going through, like you said, it doesn't take long for their name to come up, and, it gets circulated pretty quick about, watch out for this person or watch out for that,
Yeah. If you're going to invest with someone, don't hesitate to ask someone else if they've heard anything or put it on some forums.
Absolutely.
I don't spend a ton of time on Bigger Pockets, but you can generally see people on there and ask them if they've worked with anyone. Or ask the person that you're looking to partner with or whatever if they have any referrals. You've talked to a few people for me. I'd be happy to do the same for you. Because that's the biggest thing is, everyone gets enamored with the how much money you can make. Because you look at non-performing, you see that huge percentage. Find someone that you like, that's trustworthy, that'll spend time with you. Because it's going to be better even if you were to make a little bit less money, that you're probably going to be taken care of, whereas someone else might promise you the moon and you don't get taken care of.
Right.
So trust is still number one in reputation.
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. Don't be afraid to necessarily invest with someone that's still pretty new. Just make sure that if they are new, that they're telling you that they're not, oh yeah, I've done 1 million deals. Well, you've only been in business for 3 months. I don't think you've done 1 million deals. It's just, that I do believe a little bit in the fake it till you make it, but that's one thing as opposed to just straight out lying about how big you are.
Right.
Yeah. So just be careful no matter what type of investing you're going to do. Before you partner with someone, maybe do a background check.
Yeah. Find out a little bit about them and that kind of stuff. It's fun. It's, it's work, you if you want to do it right, you got to spend the time to, do your due diligence and, do all the research and work with all
that's why I tell people, if you want to make money in notes and not work that much, then you either need to find someone else to partner with, or you need to only do performing notes.
Yeah.
You'll still have due diligence on the front end, but hopefully you're just cashing checks afterwards. If you want to do non-performing notes, it's going to be a business. I mean, if you want to do more than just one or two. So you either need to figure out that you want to do it as a business, or you need to find someone else to handle that part for you, because there's a lot to know. It's always changing, and there's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. I wish it was a free money printing machine with only and unfortunately, so many people that are trying to get ahead in life through whatever type of investing, that's what this is easy. Option trading's easy. Real estate's easy. It's generally not. I mean, granted, in a big bull market, generally it's going to be harder for you to mess up and lose money, but it's still a lot of work, and especially when the market turns.
Anyway, that's kind of my, evolution into notes and, the things that I find that are, kind of challenging. But I like it. Personally, I feel a lot better, with this investment than, stocks, because I don't have any control over it.
Yep.
And, the extra work that you have to do with rentals.
Yeah. I mean, the work with rentals and just the liability,
Right.
it seems like with notes, there's always some type of liability, but it seems like, as long as you're getting the proper insurance and, assuming the note's legal and everything, you can really limit the liability and the phone calls and headaches. It's just a different thing. You're going to spend, how many hours are you going to spend in Excel? You're going to spend hundreds and on the internet doing research and going to accounting websites. So it just depends on what you want to do. If you'd rather swing a hammer, then you probably want to go do fix and flips. If you're willing to get into the small details and the boring minutia, then I'd say do notes. Part of that's depending on who you are and what you like to do as a person.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. It keeps you busy. Granted, like with any business or investments, you'll probably have a sleepless night here or there if something's going weird, or you hear about some crazy law being changed, like the laws up in Ohio changing with CFDs. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, but it could. And so it's just like, well, geez, what am I being exposed to by these politicians? They think I'm a greedy investor, and I'm just trying to make a penny here for myself and my, partners or whoever.
Yeah.
So, there's always something. But again, that's why you reach out to other investors and or other professionals, and they'll give you a good idea of what the market's doing. It's like, look, it's okay, And I try to remember this. It's easier said than done. But the best thing you can do after a bad beat or a bad investment is go get a good investment. That's the quickest way to get over it.
Absolutely.
It's much easier said than done. But it's like, man, this one's going to be a black eye. It's probably going to lose money. It's like, this is someone else's, retirement or whatever money. It's like, well, can I come out of pocket to help? What do I do? It's just like, well, the easiest thing to do is to figure out how you cut your losses there, go out and get a winner, and then, do what you can to make things right there.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes you got to be cold blooded. It is what it is, folks. It can be a little bit of a roller coaster.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's good days and bad days, but
well, and the other thing too is just getting stuff systemized. Have routines, and that'll help as well. So then, it's like even if you are distracted thinking about something, it's like, oh well, I can push myself into this grunt work. This is a routine. Stuff's still getting done.
Right, and that's well, you've already gone through it, and I'm going through it as well. As putting processes and systems in place to.
Yep.
When you get multiple notes, you've got
you got a handful. It's no big deal.
No big deal, but once you get over 20,
yeah, it seems like the 20 to 2 dozen mark is where people start hitting that wall.
Right. So you got to put them in place so you don't lose track of what's going on.
Do you have an assistant yet?
No, I'm actually in the process of looking for one. Cool.
I've got a lady that she actually lives up in Denver, and she's been helping me on a few things. I'm starting to get her trained on some other stuff to really come over in a big way. She's been absolutely great. You'll probably see more of her soon. Especially for me, since I'm trying to eventually transition to full-time, but I've still got a full-time job with the government. So there's only so many hours in the day, even though I have a great job to where I can do some of the work at work while I'm on my breaks and things like that.
Right.
It's tough. And, at some point you have to step back, and that's hard. Like getting her trained on due diligence was pretty easily, but me stepping back and just trusting in her to do it, it's hard. Yeah. That's it takes a little bit of time to get somebody. I think it's going to take some time to get somebody that, you're comfortable with, that they, can go through the due diligence process, and yep. Due diligence, just whatever. It could be, you could just have them go on LinkedIn or manage your emails and other things like that to start with. Right. But at some point, like I said, there's only so many hours in the day. So if you want to expand, you eventually got to step back and delegate a little bit. And it's at least for me, it's been much easier said than done, because I guess that should make sense, since I'm an air traffic controller. Controller's in my title. Yeah. But it's tough. It's like trusting someone with your kid for the first time. You gotta. Is it going to be okay? Yeah, it's going to be okay. Yeah. One of the areas I struggle with, besides these challenges, is just marketing. Yep.
I'm a corporate finance guy by background, so marketing is not, it doesn't come natural to me, and so.
Well, and it's not just that. We've talked about it before. There's a lot of people that are doing it incorrectly, not unethically, not immorally, but technically not to the letter of the law, because there are SEC guidelines, and you got to be very careful how you market for stuff. So unless you're only ever going to take accredited investors or do some type of fundraise with an SEC attorney, you got to be really, really careful.
Right.
About how you do it. At that point, then basically what you're going to do is you're only going to take friends, family, and acquaintances. And so you kind of have to establish those relationships first. And the other thing is just like, hey, give me your money. I want to go invest it. That's not going to happen too many times, folks. You're going to get people, you're really going to piss people off because it's really annoying. And, that's why I've had decent luck just trying to provide people with information on what I do. And, if they have questions, they'll come to me. And
right.
that seems to be what works for me, at least for now.
Yeah. Well, and your podcast that you're doing, I think is good as well.
Yep.
The information, I think, is what's beneficial and helpful for people.
Yeah, because it's a completely foreign concept. There aren't TV shows of this. Everyone knows about house fixing, flipping,
Right.
and rentals. No one knows what a real estate note is. So there's a lot of education. It's a
Right.
different mindset. But it is fun, and so it just takes a while. But that's the thing, though. Doing the right thing usually does take a while. It just
yeah.
You'll every now and then you'll hear about these flash in the pans where people overnight make a bunch of money, but they're probably not doing something right, or maybe they had a bunch to start with, and everyone's situation's a little different.
Yeah. And I don't know. Just my personal philosophy is I'm only going to do it the right way. I'm just not going to.
Well, the other thing is I hate asking people for money. I really do. Like I just, hey, here's what I do.
Yeah.
If you're interested, this is maybe what's available. But yeah, I just like, hey, I've got this deal. I want you to come give me I don't like being solicited. And so I hate soliciting other people like that.
Yeah, I'm the same way, but that's okay. For me, I think it's just going to be over time as more people learn and hear about you and, what you do and that kind of stuff. It'll grow. It's not like something that, you should expect, tons of people just banging at your door, first day out to,
Well, the other thing is, if you're desperate for money now, it's going to come off on people. And if you do invest, like you're going to get in bad deals. Like, don't be expecting your real estate note and business to be paying for your lifestyle quickly. I think unless you already had a bunch of money or knew a bunch of money to invest. And especially if you want your business to grow, like what I've been doing is, what profits I have been seeing, I just reinvest in the business. I live off of my W-2, and then I try to reinvest this for the long term.
That's nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's building slowly. It snowballs, so you just got to be a little patient. And but that's how it should be with just about any business.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true.
So what are your plans for this year, for 2020? What have you got going on? Do you have any goals set up for what you want to do or anything else?
Yeah, I do. I want to increase the portfolio of notes. I have been doing more performing notes lately than non-performing, and
I think we just about all of us have.
Yeah, and I think that is, and again, if you've got the magic crystal ball, you can make lots. But we hear a lot about possible corrections in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that going down the performing note route is one way to kind of insure yourself against any big corrections that might happen in the market. Is it going to happen? When it's going to happen? Personally, I think it's going to happen. I just don't know when. How big it's going to be, I don't know.
Yeah, is it going to be 6 months from now or 24?
Yeah. So, I've been focusing more on. I do have some non-performing, but I've been focusing on performing, and I'm looking at, doing partials that we talked about earlier with people who are interested. And that way, I can sleep good at night knowing that, they're not going to lose a lot of money on their investment, and, I'll make a little bit of money. We've got a kind of a hedge, if you would, against any market correction. Yep. So
it's less potential profits for you, but it's generally also significantly less headaches and time involved. So
right. So that's what I'm doing. I'd like to add about another, 20, 25 notes to the portfolio. And, I need to get a virtual assistant to start helping with some of this stuff because, it's starting to get to that point. And, I also want to probably get, some assistant to help me with some of the marketing.
Yep. That's what I started my assistant with. She handles most of my social media stuff, then slowly transitioned hers to where she's doing due diligence with me when we get to that point.
Right.
And so it's nice just having her do a couple hours of social media stuff each week saves me a lot of time. So now I'm able to spend more time, do the podcast or my note nugget in a mini videos, or go play with my daughter. I mean, you've got family, and it's nice to have a moment to enjoy that with them. So you're not having to work all the time, especially through the holidays that we just went through. That's the busy time of the year for us, the fourth quarter. And so I was stupid busy there for a while, but I was still I was able to close on stuff before Christmas, and still take a day or two here to actually spend time with my family and watch my daughter unwrap her gifts, which is important, because if you can't do that, then why are you working yourself to death?
Exactly. That's what it's all about, for sure. So that's what have you got planned for this year? What's kind of on your list?
So probably more like you, just add more. I think we did roughly 50 deals last year. I mean, it was a lot. And it was really surprising to me because I closed on those 10 or 11 in Jackson, Mississippi first thing last year. Mm-hmm. And then it was super quiet for 5-6 months almost. Mm-hmm. I mean, it seemed like you know the same thing. Everything was overpriced. It was garbage and it was overpriced. Couldn't find everything. Like I said, I dropped $5,000 to $10,000 on due diligence that never panned out. So I was getting pretty, I guess bitter would be the polite word to use about it, because I was just like, geez, if everything's dried up, how am I supposed to do stuff? I finally found some people that were interested, and it's like, well, there's no inventory. So that's how it was for me. It's like, I had people interested. There's no inventory. When I had inventory, no people were interested. Now it's more balanced out. But yeah, it's that was not fun. And I think that's kind of why I transitioned to more performing like yourself, because if people are going to charge 70 to 80% of the unpaid balance, I'll just buy a performing note for that same price, and I'm not having to deal with the headaches of a non-performing note. I know people live there. They've probably got insurance. Hopefully the taxes and insurance are escrowed. And so, yeah, I'm not going to make as much money, but I'm going to get a little bit money up front to pay for the due diligence and a little coin in my pocket. And then depending on how the partial's set up, I could be getting a little bit money each month, or I could be getting it in a few years. Like on these ones that I just closed on in December, I got a little bit of money on each one up front after I pay for, my expenses and due diligence. It's not a lot, but it's a couple $100 a piece, maybe $1,000. And then 5-ish years from now, I think I'll be getting about $3,000 a month in cash flow off those deals.
Cha-ching.
So that's a more long-term play. It does not help me right now. And, I'd like to have money right now so I could continue to grow the business and things, but I got a little bit. But 5 years from now, it's like, there's $3,000 coming in. That is 5 years off, but in the scheme of things, that shouldn't be too far off. And once you understand the financial calculator and how to set these things up, you can be very flexible on what your investor needs and then what you want. Right. So moving forward, what I'll probably do is, as opposed to giving my investor the next 100 payments, they'll get the next 110 payments, but they won't get the entire payment each month. I'll get $20 of that each month or something. So I'm getting a little bit of cash flow now, as opposed to all of the cash flow several years from now.
Right.
And again, that just tweaks it. Like I could have got all my money on the front end by charging them a higher price than they get all the payments. And I can do that. And so I get money now, but then compared to the amount of money that I would have got in payments on the back end, it's less total dollars, because I don't get that interest rate working for me. So if it's a 10% interest rate when you're collecting payments, you're getting part of that interest rate. Whereas if I just sell virtually all the payments now, I'm just getting a chunk of cash right now. So again, it depends on what you want and need and what the investor needs. But and so it can be very flexible that way.
Yeah, but if you look at it on a net present value, it could be a higher return, even though you're taking less now. To waiting, 10 years.
Exactly. And so that part of that too is the velocity of capital. So if you have something that you could take that money now and immediately roll it into another investment, or it could even be education as opposed to an investment, something, a skill that'll help you close more deals or get more deals now, that may be better than collecting an actual higher dollar amount over, 5+ years from now. So it just depends. It can be very hard to tell which one's the best for you. And so really it's kind of like what I tell people, it's like, people ask, should I do performing or non-performing notes? It's like, you should probably do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Get some cash now and get some cash later.
Right.
Diversification. So I think so in short, more deals. Hopefully we'll get more non-performing, probably going to do more performing notes until we can find some better non-performing stuff. Like the best deals I got last year, I got a small pool of 11 non-performing notes. And I think you've probably seen that as well, that buying small pools is probably the way we're going to have to go, if not larger pools, just because when we cherry pick against everyone else from these same people, you're paying almost full retail for it. And it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Especially if you have partners or someone else you're having to share it with.
Exactly.
But, yeah, I think, especially if you focus on performing, 24 deals should be fairly easy next year. Mm-hmm. Is that your total number, or is that just for performing or non-performing, or what are you thinking?
Oh, I'm thinking probably about 3/4 of them performing and 1/4 of them non-performing.
Okay. And I think you're probably like me, where it just depends on what's available. We can only get so much. And I think I was talking to Dan Deppen. Mm-hmm. He was talking about, it's one of those things, once you start getting where you can buy 200,000 to $250,000 at a time, there are a lot more providers and more doors will open for you as far as getting better deals, because now, you're not big time by any means, but you're not that small little mom and pop guy that's bothering. Someone's like, oh, I want to buy some notes. And it's like, they'll put a bid on 20 of them and they don't even close on one. You have more of a track. And I'm starting to see that too, since I closed on quite a few last year. People take my bids a little bit more seriously because they know that I'm going to close if they're worth closing on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like with anything, especially, real estate or any business, you got to build your reputation to really kind of get critical mass going.
Right.
And it sucks. It's like, cause you can't build your reputation until you actually close on some deals. So it's a little hard there in the beginning.
Chicken and egg.
Yeah, it is. And that's why you do your best to try to follow through with everything.
Right. So hopefully it'll be an interesting year.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think we all see the writing on the wall that the economy's going to turn. It's just like you said, we know winter's coming, but when are the White Walkers going to get here? We don't know. Yeah. Is it going to be 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? How much is this election going to influence it? It's tough to tell. If you look at it as a whole over the U.S., though, mortgages are down, refinancing's down. We're starting to see quite a bit of a softening in the hot markets. People are fleeing Illinois, the West Coast, where it's expensive, and so I think it's a matter of time. It should be pretty soon. I mean, rents in New York City have dropped dramatically this year, and so I think the writing's on the wall. It's just, again, when's that going to affect us? When are we going to be able to buy stuff at a discount? Because the mortgage market, what we're doing buying notes lags behind the economy, because we got to wait for stuff to get in default for at least 3 to 4 months. Right. And then, generally we need a lot of stuff to be in default to really get the good deals, because that's when banks and hedge funds are going to be more motivated. And so it'll be interesting to see. Are you doing any type of other strategies for real estate or to acquire property besides just notes?
Not really. I've done one kind of one deal, basically just being a lender on a house that was about 3/4 done, and the builder needed funds to finish the house and run dry.
So kind of a hard money loan a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of that, but that's just something that kind of came out of the blue that I heard about, and they contacted me, and I went and looked at it, and it looked like a good deal. And so, I went ahead and did it. But other than that, the focus really is on the notes.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, not that I want to make this about me, but a strategy that I'm doing also besides just note investing is if you look at the numbers and the calculations, if you can acquire properties for pretty cheap, you can turn around and do owner financing and make a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the CFDs that I got in Jackson early last year, the worst thing financially for me personally is if they keep paying, because they were sold with 0% interest at under market value. So I had a huge discount on them just to get a yield, because it's like you sold them at 0% interest. And the reason they did that is because they acquired these properties through cheap for like a couple $1,000 for their taxes. The homes were vacant. They put in a couple $1,000 to make them livable, then turn around and sold them. And so it's just like, well, if I had to take these back, I would charge a 9.9% interest.
Mm-hmm.
I would get a down payment if I could. And then I'm going to sell them for at least market value, if not slightly above it. And I could do all of those things and put it on a 10 to 15-year note, and it would still be cheaper than the market rent in most cases. So if you can do that, you're not going to have a shortage of borrowers lined up to do owner financing.
Right.
For it and make some, and those yields were like 30 to 40%. I mean, really nice for a performing note.
Nice.
So I was looking at that. I was like, well, so how do you get properties for cheap? If we can't find a good source of notes for us to buy, how do we make our own? And so tax liens, I think, are potentially, and deeds are a decent strategy depending on where you're at. Some states and counties are better. Maybe see if there's stuff that we could get over the counter for cheap. Because even if the home's been vacant for a long time, if you can get it for $2,000 and make it livable for 10 to 20,
yeah,
you can market that as a handyman special. Just make it livable. You don't have to make it super nice, because a lot of these people that would need owner financing would be willing to come in and do some of the work themselves. So I think that's an interesting way to do it. And I'll probably talk about that in the future. Hopefully it goes well. It's just an idea. Because
I'll be interested to hear how that progresses, because there's I've been looking at things on as far as auctions as well. I haven't gotten anything or pursued them yet, but I was thinking the same thing. You could get them at a decent price and you turn around.
Well, Texas, is super desirable, and so you probably have a lot of competition there. So you may have to go to some more of the tertiary markets where you're not going to have as much competition. Some of these smaller towns. Because when I started doing tax liens and deeds and things like that back in college, it was good for a year or two, and then everyone started doing it. The big banks came in and started bidding everything down. So there can be quite a bit of competition. People hear about these stories. It's like, oh, I bought a really nice home that I live in now for $3,000 worth of back taxes, and it's like that's not going to happen that often.
Yeah,
unfortunately, it'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. So. I think that's where, even though we focus on notes, you're gonna have to be creative to get notes in the future, whether that's from other asset managers or just getting assets and then creating your own notes. I think a few people have started doing selling land that way on owner financing, and that might be an interesting thing to try.
I've heard some of that as well, and I think because I haven't foreclosed on a lot of them, I haven't done seller financing, but that's definitely one of the exit strategies I would pursue, because I think doing the owner financing is a great way.
And again, if you can get the asset for cheap, a small down payment and like a year or two's worth of payments, you could be financed out of position, if not before then, and then it's all profit. So I mean, it just depends. If you can find a way to get the assets for cheap, then owner financing can be great.
Yeah, but, you can get them cheap,
Of course, it's like anything. You get anything desirable for cheap, you can make money. So that's the hard part. That's the whole buy low, sell high thing. Hardly anyone ever gets to do it consistently.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's about it. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, that covers most of the stuff, I guess, on my list. And I just want to thank you for having me on. It's always great to visit with you and catch up and share a few war stories. And
yeah. No, I really appreciate you coming on, and I think we covered a lot of it. I think we've covered just about everything besides all the fine details of actually closing on a note. So, I mean, I hope everyone was able to keep up. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll make sure to get Joe's information up here for you. So if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to him. Joe's pretty much like me. We've always got 30 minutes for someone just to
Absolutely.
go over things and talk. And oh, what events are you planning on going to this year? So if anyone wants to meet you at any of those.
I haven't got that all lined out yet, but
No?
I definitely go to the Note Expo.
Okay.
And if Quest has an event, I'll be attending that. As far as the other ones, I kind of need to see where they are and
So basically, if it's in Texas, you're going to probably try to be there.
Oh yeah, if it's in Texas, I'll be there, baby.
Yeah. That's the hard part for me is there's real estate stuff in Colorado, but none of the Note Expos or anything like that. So I have to travel for everything and get time off of work, and
Right.
so it can be a bit of a pain. I try to go to them. I'm going to hopefully be able to go to Note Expo this year. We'll see.
Yeah, that's usually pretty good. I've enjoyed that one.
Cool.
Sure. So.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this time, Joe. I really appreciate you being on, and as the year progresses, we'll probably check in with you, see if you've got any assets you want to talk about, and any more black eyes. I know I'll have one or two that I'll probably talk about. But I mean, that's the thing, though. That's where I learn the most, and I think that's where most people learn the most. You got to know what's the bad, because everyone talks about the good. Everyone talks about the fish that was this big that got away, but they don't tell you about the really honest bad beats and what you learn from it.
Exactly. There are some good ones, but don't ever think there aren't some bad ones.
Yeah, they're not all home runs, folks. So lots of base hits, but that's okay. You can make a good living and good retirement just off the base hits.
Absolutely.
Well, all right. That's it for this time, folks. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me and Joe, and we'll see you next time.